Yesterday, I tossed out that I think there's a great deal of popularity in this audience that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has unlocked. And I didn't know what the numbers would reflect, but I said, for instance, if you gave me a choice of voting, and again, no third party, and you gave me a choice only of these two, death is not an option, you can't pick anybody else, I said I would vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over Mitt Romney. And I said I would vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over Paul Ryan. And a lot of reaction rolled in, so I thought, you know what? I should put a poll up. And this poll has now been retweeted by Clay and Buck, at Clay and Buck on Twitter. You can go vote in it there. We'll also maybe put it up on the front page of the Clay and Buck website to allow people who are not active on social media, don't have accounts, you can go vote there. We'll see what the numbers look like. Buck, these stun me. Right now, over 60,000 of you have voted in this poll. Again, you can go see it right now at Clay and Buck. You can scroll down. In fact, I'll retweet it right now so it shows up right at the top of my feed at Clay Travis. You can also go vote in it there. Over 61,000 of you have voted. 79% of people, Buck, said they would vote for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over Mitt Romney. I think that's pretty significant because I bet a large percentage of people listening to us right now actually voted for Mitt Romney for president in 2012. Now, granted, Mitt Romney since then has, you're nodding, I bet a huge percentage of people.
Ever since people saw Mitt Romney with his mask on, marching and being like, I'm here because I want to march with Black Lives Matter. Everyone's like, oh, yes, Mitt Romney, there's a man who understands the struggle. Like, give me a break. Mitt Romney has been a guy that people have had to we've had to try to forget the Republican votes that were cast for him in 2012. I still think he was a better option than Obama, but he's not running this time, though, so I think it'll be more interesting to see what about RFK Jr. versus a Republican who's not Trump or DeSantis.
Well, he would crush. Let's run through them. I'll give you my guess. It would be, RFK Jr. would crush Asa Hutchinson. I think he probably would beat in this audience Chris Christie. I think he would beat Nikki Haley, honestly. I do.
That, to me, is a little more interesting because she's a mainline Republican. Right? Mitt Romney has gone over basically to the other team. Mitt Romney is effectively Liz Cheney with shorter hair.
Which speaks to Utah. He hasn't announced, Mitt Romney, whether he's going to run for re-election. I believe I'm correct in this. Utah people can correct me if I'm wrong. But remember, he refused to endorse, Mitt Romney did, Mike Lee, the senator from Utah. He said he was sitting out because he was friends with both the guy who was Democrat
Romney's
nominee.
Basically a Democrat now. So that's why that's why when you look at a RFK Jr. Romney comparison, it's like saying someone like an Asa Hutchinson. There are It is the case that there are Republicans who are effectively Democrats, but they just like to pretend to be Republicans. You never get Democrats who are actually right-wing, though. That's not really a thing. That doesn't really exist.
Well, unless you would count Joe Manchin or somebody like that. There used to be
right-wing. I think Manchin is.
But he's closer to the middle than anything, right? It used to be the case that you did have more crossovers because they were legacy, right?
Yeah.
You'd have guys who were members of parties that they didn't really fit because the parties had changed a lot.
I also think that the more people on the right have to find out about RFK Jr.'s policies on things, my guess is he's probably, I'm guessing here, I don't know, and maybe he's addressed some of this. He's pro-choice. My guess is he's pretty into high taxes. You start to go down the list of things. I don't know where he is on crime. I have no idea. I don't know if anyone does because that could go either way. But on some of those issues, he would lose Republican support if he came out and he has to repudiate. He said crazy stuff on climate change, which I believe he has said. I don't like the way I said that or something else. But the climate change thing could be a problem.
Trump said a lot of crazy left-wing things.
No,
back in the day before.
I'm not saying that it means that he can't get support. I'm just saying he has to come out and clarify on these things where he would stand out, which is why we want to have him back on the show. I will not be at the doctor. I will be here. So
I think what it really represents is people are desperately craving authenticity. And I think even if you or me or other people out there, this is what I get, my sense of the national electorate as we move towards the primary season, is a lot of people feel, and the reason why I think Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan are good examples of this is a guy who in 2012 was the presidential nominee. Paul Ryan was the Speaker of the House for Republicans.
And vice presidential nominee.
And a vice presidential candidate. I think that RFK Jr., I think that RFK Jr. would beat both of those guys among Republican voters right now. And here's why I think that would happen, Buck. I think there is, one, a desire among a huge percentage of the population for there to be a reckoning over COVID. And I think there is a deep well of distrust that is similar, I would imagine, I wasn't alive, to what happened coming out of Vietnam over the fact that that your government lied to you. And I think people are willing, again, this is my read of the national electorate, I think people are willing to say, okay, I disagree with you on that. If you just honestly tell me what you think, at least I know what you mean. And I think Trump hit on a lot of this in 2016, Buck. And I think his presidency, honestly. What did Trump do in office? Not a lot that he said he would not do. Now, he wasn't able to accomplish everything.
Yeah, he said things that he believed to be true that are things that a lot of people believe to be true, but they felt they weren't allowed to say, including among other Republicans. And that was the breakthrough. I think that right now, a lot of people, the craving of authenticity, I do think that's reading the feelings that people have right now. I think that as things get closer, you get into the fear of losing and the desire of winning, and that starts to crowd out, meaning, well, I'm going to vote for, whether you're Democrat, Republican, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because I don't want the Republicans to win. And so that's where I think things narrow pretty quickly from everyone saying, well, I want the most authentic candidate. All of a sudden, electability, which is a very amorphous thing, right? You're not electable until you're elected. You know, we're going to argue a lot about this. Everyone's going to be arguing about who's electable. And people will point out that we've seen plenty of times in recent political history in this country, Trump being probably the best example of it in 2016, where, that person can't win until they do. And then all of a sudden, everything, the conventional wisdom changes.
And remember, one of the most controversial things that Trump was willing to say? To me, this was when I started really taking.
I mean, there are a lot, Clay. So remember the controversial thing that Trump said?
The one, well, I mean, in terms of directly attacking Republican Orthodox.
Oh, the Iraq War thing?
Yes. That was where I looked up and I said, so that to me is evidence of being willing to challenge the existing party. That to me is the direct attack, right? Was when he said the Iraq War was a disaster and George W. Bush blew it.
So I will say, though, he read something very important in the shift in politics that had occurred. Remember, that was also something that Barack Obama in the Democrat primary was able in 2008 to outmaneuver Hillary on, which was her previous support of the Iraq War. The Iraq War was, as much as Democrats tried to rewrite history, John Kerry tried to rewrite that history. He failed. The Iraq War was a bipartisan push at the time. Both parties had their hands all over that. And Trump came along. I think he saw, I'm not saying he didn't feel this way because he saw what happened in Iraq and just came to this assessment, but also politically, it was clear that on the Democrat side, Barack had an advantage over Hillary because of her support for Iraq. And on the Republican side, everybody who was prominent in Republican politics had effectively been tied to the Iraq War in some capacity. So Trump comes along and he's like, that was terrible. What was that all about? And people were out to say, wow, finally we get it. Because it's a little bit harder if you voted for Iraq and you gave 15 speeches about how great the Iraq War was going or whatever, which was true of a lot of Republican members of Congress, et cetera. So that was a big change for him.
I also would say that's why I think, and I know people out there are going to think it's crazy, I think Trump is seriously considering putting RFK Jr. on the ticket. I really do. And I know people out there, you may say, you're crazy for even suggesting it. That is the single most disruptive thing that Trump could do in selecting a vice presidential candidate would be RFK Jr.
You see that DeSantis has said he will not be a vice president. So to be fair and to be clear, I've said this on the show. When people called in and they said, what about a Trump DeSantis ticket? I said, I think that would be very powerful. Ron won't do it. And now Ron has said he won't do it. So sometimes we say things. To be fair, go ahead.
To be fair, every single Republican or Democrat presidential candidate of the last 50 years, when they're running for president, has said at some point, I won't be the VP, right? And a lot of those people end up being the VP.
I don't think we could talk to some Republicans right now and say, would you be Trump's VP? And they would say, well, I think I should be the first choice, but I'd be happy. Ron has completely ruled out VP under Trump.
So I get it. But if Trump wins and it's over, right? If Trump wins, the issue with DeSantis as VP, as we have talked about, this is why we got to
get the betting board up. I would give crazy odds to anybody who wanted it. There is no chance that Ron DeSantis would take a VP slot under Trump. I think
the legality of it is actually the reason why he wouldn't be the nominee, right? You can't really have two from the same state because there's constitutional issues.
Trump has houses in New Jersey and New York. I mean, he could.
Do you think New Jersey would allow Trump to easily switch his residency to New Jersey? They would go to court to try to say that they have to give up Florida's electoral votes. I don't want that legal issue. If DeSantis were the governor of any other state than Florida where Trump lives, I think DeSantis in March, if Trump had swept to the nomination and he came to him and he said, I want you to be my VP, I think he would take it.
You and I disagree.
Because, Buck,
I don't think he would do it.
You're the nominee 100% in 28 if you're Trump's VP and you're DeSantis, right? Now, there are other people Trump could pick as VP that aren't as well known. For instance, I'll just toss one out. If he picked Kristi Noem, I don't think that means Kristi Noem has to be the nominee in 28. I think if DeSantis were the VP, it would be a default. Trump wins in 24. There's not hardly even a campaign in 28 on the Republican primary side.
I see the logic of it. I don't think he would take that role.
I get it. I get it.
Right. And it's not because of legal. I'm looking at the egos and mentalities of the men involved. It's not going to happen.
I think it's like when you're going after chicks. Sometimes the best way to get the chick is to pretend you have no interest in getting the chick. It's a tried and true. All the boys out there, young guys, and every girl's like, yep, one of the best ways to get the chick, pretend that you have no interest in getting the chick. Makes you way more desirable.
It's between sports and chick analogies. We cover a lot of ground here on this show, everybody.
It's all psychology.